old timers hear, when the old timers are around and they hear these people talking, they all say, "Hey, what's ditch?" Okay, turn it over to my older brother here.
That means you're taking it to your heart when you say,
Yes. Pasteno, pinamano. Good. You make me grateful. Can I stand up? Sometimes I feel very uncomfortable sitting down. So you might have to move your camera around.
But the camera will be just on your belly.
Oh.
Hey, maybe you better sit down.
That's good. You know, one of the things that that a lot of young people that I work with, they don't realize how old I am. How old do you think I am?
34.
34. Great. I wish I was. I'd do all the things all over again, but this time I'll do it better. But I'm 80, and people don't think that I'm 80. One of the medicines that I've got is when I make you laugh. It makes me happy. That's how we learn. Be happy. My grandparents always told me, don't be a whiner. Don't be bringing your problems to other people. They always said, smile and make them laugh. That's why I usually try to make people laugh from the start so that they can listen. What we're here for is that we are oral people. He went to the first classroom. He told you he went to the first school, and that's the Indian school, where you sit around like this. And in those days, we don't have paper and pencil. How you learn, how we teach is through stories. You listen very carefully to the stories that are told. Elders, when they tell stories, they go into specific details. And that's how we learn. I learned to be a hunter by listening to the hunters tell their stories. When I was about your age, you young fellas, when I was about your age is when they really make it very important. Now sit down there in front of the elders and listen very carefully so that you can be a hunter, because they go into details of how it happened. I'll just give you a little quick example of how we learn. The first thing is that they always say, you go to hunt before the sun shines, early in the morning, because that's when the animals are out. Later on, as the sun gets higher, the animals are sleeping, so you can't find them. So when the animals are out early, that's when you find the animals. And then they go through the details of what you look for. And the story that I usually use is that I got up early in the morning, saddled up my horse. What kind of a horse? There's details in that. Black horse, I called him Old Blackie, because it was a black horse. And then I rode, and I went up on the hill, and I looked down the valley because I was looking for moose. Just to give you an example. The other thing is that I test the wind. Which way is the wind coming from? Because when you're at the top of the hill, the winds all come. You see how you learn? The winds all funnel up like that, so that if the moose is on the other side that I'm looking for, he won't get scent of me. But when I get up there, I'll find. So this is why it's very important that you listen very carefully to the stories. My friend's going to tell you the stories. And I will tell you a little story too about be happy with who you are. That's the first thing. Be happy with who you are. At one time, we went through so much discrimination and racism that a lot of us just didn't want to be First Nations. We didn't want to be Indian. Because we forgot that through residential school. That was taken away from us. But I'm very happy that the elders today are still coming back, talking to you. And we're happy to be here so that you can get back to being proud of who you are. And the way they teach is by telling stories. And I'll tell you a little story that they use. One of the ones that they use. It's about these three girls. On the hunting trips, every evening, these three girls used to go out by themselves away from camp. And they lay on the ground and they gaze at the stars. Pretty soon they start to imagine those stars as beautiful young men. Before they know it, they start to wish they were young men. You see, the story is that now they're wondering, the elders, when they heard what was happening, because one of the girls spoke up and they said, you know, we're wondering if those stars were young men. We imagine what they look like. We imagine one day I want to marry one of them. So the elders got wind of that, and the elders told them, no, no, no. You've got men here in this camp. What about those boys? You're wishing for somebody that you will never be happy with because you're not going to be one of them. How can you be? But the girls kept on wishing that those were men. So one night, one of the girls said, gee, if he came down, I'd grab him so that I can go home with him and marry him. She was gone. Taken from the face of the earth, gone. The other girls never noticed because they too were caught this fantasy of the stars, beautiful men, the stars. The second one said the same thing. Gee, I bet you he's a good hunter. I bet you I don't have to work if I married him. How many of you sometimes think that, gee, you want to be somebody? Maybe Justin Bieber? How many of you? No. You see, you got to be careful of what you wish for. Second one went up, the last one started to look, where are they? Looked up, couldn't find them. So see, he was still caught in this fantasy. And looked up there, that's my man up there. I wish he'd come down and get me. Came down and picked her up. All of a sudden, they didn't come back to the camp. The families were worried. Where are they? They didn't know where they went. Finally, out of nowhere appeared a man, a beautiful man. He said, are you wondering where your girls are? We took them because they wanted to be with us. We took them. They'll never be with their families. He pointed up to the stars. He said, he pointed to the tail of the Big Dipper. There's a little star at the end of the Big Dipper, but just past that are three little stars sitting close together like that. They said, those are your girls. You'll never have them back. They'll never come back because they wish they were not happy enough to be who they are. They wish to be somebody else, and that's where they are. They have no family because they're not connected with anybody up there. So the story, the moral of that story is be happy with who you are. Be happy what you've got. How many of you got parents? Do you listen to your parents? Or do you say, whatever? Is that what you say? You got to be careful, you see. You got to listen to your parents. Because they're your parents. Because of them, you are here. Be happy with what you've got. Be happy with what they're giving you. Because you will never be somebody else. At one time, I thought I'd be one of the best cowboys in the world, roper. Am I with that? No. I found out quickly I wasn't. Because the Creator, God, loves variety. In the summertime, when you look out there, do you see all the flowers all the same color? No. You're all different. You cannot be somebody that you're not, and they cannot be who you are. So remember that.
Hey, Emanuela and Nighthawk, will you come to the office, please? Emanuela and Nighthawk, to the office, please.
Be happy with that. And the stories that they tell all teaches us that. And the way I became a hunter is by sitting down in the evenings when the hunters come home. We all ate around the fire. You know, we had no plates. The meat was all spread out on spruce boughs or willow boughs and just barbecued over the open fire and banding. We eat that. As soon as we're finished, they tell us, and that's when the hunters get together and they start telling stories of their hunt. We listen very carefully. My mother always said, go. My father always said, come on, sit here, you'll learn. Because one of these days you have to be a hunter. You got to learn to provide for your family. You got to bring meat home. And the next day we used to mimic what the stories they talk about, where they found the big bull moose. They went over the hill, and we mimic those stories. We look for little hills around the campfire, and that's where, okay, you're the moose, you sit over there, and I'll come and hunt you. You know, we play those, that's how we learn. So in the classroom of our elders, we listen very carefully. You are here for a reason, and unless you listen, you won't learn. And the stories that our elders talk about and tell makes learning interesting, and it's so natural. So with that, I'll let my friend, my little brother tell you his stories as well. I'll get up like my older brother.
You're supposed to all say, okay. I always put on my shawl. You see that paint on it? How many of you seen paint? That went to ceremony and seen paint? Put your hand up. Well, all that paint is from all the stories that I used to listen to the old people when we used to have getting together with them. So I'm going to tell you, he told you a story about the stars, and we believe in stars. One time we talk about stars, and you see teepees. Even if you go to Stampede, you see all these teepees. They got circles on top. Some of them have circles on the side. All those circles are stars. And when we talk about, when he was talking about the girls looking up and seeing a handsome man, like this guy behind the camera. Those are stars. Or if they talk about, in our case, we have his name is Mistaken Sun. He's a star, it's a circle. Or if they talk about the sun, it's a circle. If they talk about the moon is a circle. So all those circles are stars. So I want to maybe tell you a story about stars. One time, same kind of story. His stories come from Nakota Sioux, and I don't understand their language at all. Our stories come from the Blackfoot. Two different languages. We can't understand each other, but the stories, when you tell them in English, all of a sudden they start sounding the same. One time there was these girls all around camp in the old days, way before horses were here, in the days of what the old people will say, imitex. In them days when they hauled their teepees and belongings on dogs, dog travas, and they all walked on foot. In them days, they were talking about, they had a camp, and these girls went down to the water to get wood. Some of them got pails to get water, some of them took straps to haul wood. As the girls, it was in the evening, as the girls collected wood, they put their straps down and they sat down for a rest. And while they were resting, they looked up at the stars. And one of them, and the girls would look at stars, and they'll say, "Yeah, look at that star. Yeah, some missed that star." They were wishing that that star was a man, and they would marry that man. Anyway, when they all got up and they started, the one girl that was saying that, her strap kept breaking. So she'd wrap up the wood, tie it up, put it over her shoulder and start walking, and the strap would break. So he told the other girls, just go on. I'll fix my strap and I'll be right there. So she knelt down and started fixing it. The girls all left. All of a sudden she looked up and there was a tall, dark-haired, handsome man standing next to her. And she said, "I'm that star you were looking at. You were wishing to stay with me. I came to get you. Now I'm going to take you up into the Spumitapi, the upper people. I'm taking you up there." So he took her. He told her to close her eyes, and then he took her up to the star people. He lived with her. And then one day she was told not to dig this turnip. She had a digging stick, so she dug this turnip when her husband was out. And all this wind came up and she looked down. And when she looked down to earth, she seen her camp. As soon as she seen her camp, right away, her heart got heavy. And she sat like this, started crying, looking down. She remembered her family. She said, "Oh, I wish this star was a handsome man for me to live with. Now I'm way up here and I'm looking way down my family. I feel sorry. I want to be back with my family." So she put the turnip back and then she went home. As soon as her husband came back, she noticed, you know, when you walk in the house, all of a sudden you feel something's not right. Everybody's quiet or they're not saying something. That's how he felt when he went in a teepee. And he said, oh, my wife, something's happened, because she's not acting right. So they sat in the front, he made a smudge in the teepee, put smudge, he prayed, he told his wife, okay, tell me what happened. And she said, okay. She prayed. Said, all right, I'll tell you, I dug that turnip and I seen my camp. Now I'm lonesome. All right, I'm going to send you back home. So all the animals from the above gave her gifts to go home with. And they made a headdress that we use in the Sundance. They gave it to her, tied it on her back, and from where the North Star is, that's where she came down. For the Blackfoot people, we say Punuka. Around Red Deer is where she came down. And when she came down, she brought us to Sundance. And then, when she got married here to a man in her camp, she was happy. But their daughter did the same thing. Early in the morning when the sun came up, she'd lay there and look at the sunset. Gyaw! If he was a man, if that was Sykes, I'd marry him. So the son said, okay, I'm going to marry you. So every year, every day, through the whole year, the sun would travel across the sky. And a bunch of young boys really liked her. She was a nice-looking girl. They kept going to ask her. And she would say, nope, nope. Because the son came to her and told her, okay, you're my wife. You can't marry anybody else. You have to look after yourself. You have to look after how you talk to boys. You have to be modest. How you dress. You got to treat everybody good. You got to try hard in camp so we all survive. And one boy finally came. His name is Scarface. Went, and she told him that he told her he wanted to stay with her because she was a nice-looking lady. And she told Scarface, go to the sun and ask for permission. If he says yes, I'll stay with you. So Scarface took a journey. It took him 4 seasons to get back. How long is a 4 seasons? Does anybody know?
A year.
Now 1 year he left. Scarface. He went to Creator's Lodge. And when he got into Creator's Lodge, he couldn't get into Creator's Lodge. It was so hot, because that's where the sun lives. So the sun's, his boy, his name is Morning Star, came out and he's made friends with Scarface. And when he made friends with Scarface, Morning Star did some magic, so he was able to come in the teepee, and he brought him in the teepee. And the son, as soon as he came home, he noticed, as soon as he walked in the teepee, there's something different again. He noticed, he felt it. So he made a smudge. He said, what's in the teepee? Something's not right in the teepee. And then Morning Star said, I brought my friend. He's a human, Nii'danamska. He's a real person. He came to talk to you. So the son, all right, what was your visit, the purpose of your visit? He said, I need you to cure my scar, and I came to ask to marry that girl. So they went in a sweat, and the son cured the scar with a feather. He wiped his face off, and the scar went away. Then he said, okay, you asked for the girl to marry, I'll let her go. You tell her I give you you can marry her. And he gave him the feather. And he made his journey back to Earth was 4 magic things happened to him. And he came to Earth. Then he gave the feather as proof to the girl and said, Creator said I could marry. So that's how they got married. And those are the stories that we hear from the old people. The old people would say the girls are all, when they're young, they're all married to the sun. They have to look after themselves. They can't run around chasing boys. They can't run around doing crazy things. They got to be modest. They got to look after themselves. They got to comb their hair. They got to help the old ladies and learn and have fun with all their own age. That's what the old people said, because the sun is looking after you. One of these days, one of the boys are going to make a journey to the sun in their mind. They're going to say, oh, there's a nice girl. I'm going to ask for that girl. And the sun will say, all right, I'll cure the scar off your face. Now go ask her to marry. And that's how we were told to get together. When we go meet girls, we have to be, as men and boys, we have to be put on our best clothes. We know Creator gave us the right to go and ask. We've got to act good. We've got to be helpful. We've got to be courteous. And then you approach the girl. So those were stories from our old timers that told us how to behave. And today, I don't know where the stories have gone. That's what the old people talk about, magic. The old people say magic is when you hear a story and you say, oh yeah, that's what he's saying. The girls have to look after themselves. Oh yeah, that's what he's saying. The boys have to present themselves in an honorable way. That's what magic is. So the old people gave us that magic. So that's the story. I had a lot of stories I wanted to talk to you about, and some of them were crazy, and some of them were about Sykes. But today, since he talked about stars and of young people, those are stories we heard of our young people. And hey.
You know what I've noticed while you were saying, okay, you young men, you're given the gift to ask again. And I was looking at Rose over there, going through her mind, said, he didn't ask me.
I stole her.
You stole her.
But she's happy.
Yeah, but she's happy. That's the main thing, you're happy. But you see, that's how we learn. By these stories, we learn that who we are will always be who we are. Don't ever think you're less than anybody else. And this is exactly the little short story that I want to tell you about. Sykes, that's the trickster, Sykes. He was always pulling off pranks. So one day he decided, gosh, you know, I'm going to stop the sun from coming up. I'm going to stop the sun from coming up so that people will know that I have the power, you know. He's always the big brother. He calls everybody little brothers, little sister. He was always the one that can do everything. So one day he decided, he talked to the elders. When the elders were sitting around this in the campfire, they were telling their stories about why we need the sun. Why we need the sun. they were telling us about, they were telling them about what he was talking about, you know, the girls are married to the son. Unless the son gave us the consent, you boys have to ask the son to marry the girls. Unless the son gives the consent, you don't marry them. You can't marry them, even if you try. And this is one of the reasons why he decided, oh, I'm going to stop the son from coming up. So he would talk to the elders. He said, gosh, you know, I think I can make the son stop. They said, well, how are you going to do that? Oh, because he's a trickster. He can do anything he wants. So he decided, he went to this big campfire, and right along the campfire, you know how we make bows and arrows out of sinew? When they were fixing the meat, the ladies usually take the sinew off the sirloin. You know how they take them off and put it up to dry. So he goes up and he said, I'll take the sinew and I'll make a long rope and I'll rope the son. And I'll tie it down to see what happens. I think I can rope it. So the elder said, well, why did you want to do that? Oh, but look at all these young guys over here. They're all looking at those girls and they want permission to marry those girls. But those girls are mine. You see the trickster? He wanted all the girls to himself. So he decided. He said, okay, if you think you can do it, go ahead. So he got the permission, so he went out at night and he laid a snare of sinew. The sun coming up, he caught the sun in the snare. And all of a sudden, the sun wasn't coming up, and the elders were worried. They said, what happened? One of them said, remembered, well, the trickster said he was going to stop the sun from coming up. Maybe he did. So they went to check, and sure enough, he snared the sun and tied it down to a big rock. Tied it to a big rock. So they got together and they said, well, we need the sun. Let's turn it loose. But it was so hot they couldn't get up close to it. And all the animals came along. They came along, they volunteered one at a time. I can do it. From the biggest, it started from the biggest. He said, oh, I can do it. I can get up there. The big moose came along. He said, I'm going to go in there and I'll chop that sinew and let it go. Couldn't get up. Got close enough, but he burned to death. And then the other ones started coming. And then in the background, they keep hearing this little beep, 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 little squeak back there. Nobody paid attention to it. But it was the little mouse. It was the little mouse. He said, I can do it. I can do it. I can go up there. I can sneak underneath. I'll chew on it and let it go. So the elders got together. They had this big smudge too. You know, they took the little mouse and they put it over the smudge so they have the power to go. And he went over. And he got up there and he started to take a couple of bites, and it was so hot. He started to swivel up, so they had to bring him back out, bring him back to the campfire again, smudge him again so he come back alive. But guess who was cooling him off? It was the frog. It was the frog that was going to the water and spraying water on him so that he could cool off. The frog. Second time, the little mouse went up there again, chewed, took a couple bites, they had to pull him out again. The frog came along, cooled him off. Third time, he almost got it. They brought it back, the frog cooled him off. On the fourth time, he bit through the sinew. and the sun came up. The sun came up. The story is just, again, don't think that you're nobody. Everything in this world, even the smallest, can play a big role in creation, in the life of people. Even if you think you don't have enough to learn, you can still learn. They always say it's 4 times. 4 times. Everything is in force. If you can't do it the first time, try again. How many of you have that problem in school? What about your math? Your science? Whatever subject you're working on. Do you have problems with it? Sometimes, yeah. And what do? Do you quit the first time that you can't do it? No. You keep trying. You keep trying. Even if you think you don't have enough to learn, you keep trying. The lesson is, don't ever think you're less than anybody. Don't ever think that you cannot do it. Because you can do it. The Creator has given every one of us an ability and capability to do what we want to do. Our elders always say, the life you live is what you make it. That's the lesson of the little mouse. He's still alive today. He may be a pest, but please respect him. He needs to be respected too. So, because he's big. It's the reason why we still have the sun. Unfortunately, today, because of pollution, we have to put on, what do they call it, sunblock before we go out? Maybe the mouse should have left the sun there. We might have been better off today. No. That's not.
So, I hope I didn't put you to sleep with those stories, but did any of you hear any stories from your grandpas and your grandmas? Any of you hear any stories?
Any volunteers? You're going like this. Can you share your story with us?